Good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you all. I'm Lucy Handley, Adult Programs Coordinator at the Ridgefield Library, and I'm going to introduce Barb Jennis, Ridgefield's Poet Laureate Emerita, who continues tirelessly to champion the expression of poetry with programs like this. Barb has a new chapbook coming out soon, don't you, Barb?
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us about. Welcome, everyone. I can't wait to hear what you all have to read.
Me too. Me too. Hi, everybody. It's Barb. As Lucy said, we're so glad to be back after our summer hiatus, which just seemed to go on forever. So we're starting up. We'll have monthly Poems from Connecticut's Four Corners readings every first Wednesday at 7 o'clock. We have a great lineup for October. We have Nadia Sims from Manchester. We have Pat Hale from West Hartford, John Barr from Greenwich, Susan Kinsolving from Lakeville, and Rich Bowering from Deep River. So please join us for that reading on October 4th. And I don't want to take up too much time. I just would like to ask everyone to please mute yourself because you do pop up if you cough or anything else, you kind of pop up on the video. Not that we mind. You may have instant fame you hadn't planned on. And then also, you could feel free in the chat to put comments on as the poets are reading. We love to go back and see what people have written about what we've read. And then at the end, at the very end of having all five poets read, we'll take questions if there are any. So let's get going here. I'm going to start off first of all with Pat Mottola. Pat Mottola teaches creative writing at Southern Connecticut State University, where she earned both an MS in art education and an MFA in creative writing. Her work is published in journals across the country, and she served as editor of the Connecticut River Review from 2012 to 2017. Today, Pat is the president of the Connecticut Poetry Society, and she mentors Afghan women writers living in Afghanistan and beyond. In fact, they have a wonderful anthology coming out, which maybe Pat will say something about too. She is the author of two collections of poetry, Under the Red Dress and After Hours. Pat was the recipient of the prestigious CSCU System-Wide Board of Regents Outstanding Teacher Award in 2019, as well as the J. Philip Smith Outstanding Teacher Award in 2021. So please help us welcome Pat Mottola. Hi, Pat.
Hi. Thank you all for coming. And thank you, Barb, for inviting me tonight and for organizing such amazing events. You really have selflessly done so much for poetry in the Connecticut poetry scene and beyond. And I want everyone to know that Barb is Connecticut Poetry Society's new pop director. So you can expect another stellar pop season this fall. I'm going to read mostly new work tonight. A lot of you know that I write about people. That's my fascination and my inspiration. I get inspired in bars, nursing homes, school, and even just looking out my window. So I teach creative writing at Southern, and my new book will have a section about my students. So I'm going to start off with a couple. I chose these two because they both emphasize the importance of communication, sharing, and telling experiences. They kind of bookend one another. So my first poem is titled Teaching Online During the Pandemic. Dear students, I tell you again today, you are living history, the breathing textbooks of the future. Write, record, a poem, a journal. Your grandchildren will ask you questions for their class assignment. What was it like back then? Tell them how you dial into Zoom University for an education. The passcode is free, but you can't afford the books. Tell them how the good professors send you chapters scanned from textbooks, expecting the copyright police to barge through their doors unannounced in the darkness with a no-knock warrant. Tell them how students with no computer, no laptop, no internet at home attend by phone since their father was furloughed. Tell them how there is no camera on the laptop you share with your sisters, how your technology crashes, your power goes out, how your younger siblings are screaming in the background at home, so you cannot class participate. Instead, you mute yourself. But on the positive, you expand your vocabulary. COVID, pandemic, quarantine, antibodies, respirators, PPE masks, food insecurity, isolation, desperation, social distance, and oh yes, Zoom rhymes with doom and gloom. Tell them how you suddenly learned you are essential. Fake smile, fake hope, fake news, fake education, fake reality is as real as it gets. No punchline, just the joke. A president who believes no lives matter. The bitter history of excuses, frustrations, web meetings, web conferences, web classes, web funerals. You don't have time for yourself on the edge. You fall off the map of innocence. Discover the world is flat. And my second poem about my students is called Tell Me, and it's my address to them. Write it, the poem you never thought you could. It will bloom with possibilities, your dreams. Tell me your secrets, your insecurities. Tell me you didn't know your classmates aren't perfect, but they're afraid to tell. Tell me about your anxiety. Tell me how you would rather be a woman. Tell me how your parents fight, how you hid under the coffee table during their arguments when you were 3. Tell me how you locked yourself in your room when you were 5, how your father left when you were 10 because of you, how it's all your fault. Tell me how gunshots in your neighborhood keep you distracted at night, can't do your homework. Tell me about your eating disorder, how you hide your body with too big clothes, how you're battling depression. Tell me, I will listen. I also write about the town characters in my town. I'm sure every town has them. My first town character poem is titled Jack. He lives above the liquor store in the center of town. Mornings he walks Route 10 by memory, the same path, repeated, timed, each block measured in careful steps, as he counts each brick in the sidewalk like Gretel's breadcrumbs. 80 bricks to the town green, 90 to the synagogue next door to the church, 45 to the cemetery. When I pass him on my morning walk, he stops to talk at high speed, his own eccentric beat, a song with one note, repeating his own words like a refrain. Always he asks if I go to church and where, says, if God is for us, then who can be against us? I don't tell him the truth, that I am a sinner. I lie repeatedly as he repeats himself, desperate to convince me I need salvation. Rumor has it he's a broken genius, wanting to save someone, maybe himself. Our faith can move mountains, he quotes, for we walk by faith, not by sight. In 60 more bricks, we pass by the gas station, cars parked in the lot awaiting repair. We part ways. Bless you, he says. I follow my path home, knowing Jack will find his own way. Visiting people in a nursing home is a very emotional experience for me. And this was inspired by one of those visits. It's called The Tombstones Are Breathing. Walk slowly, You can hear their silent, shallow breaths. They're lined up in rows in the hallways of nursing homes, wheelchairs facing the courtyard or the nursing station, anywhere but where they are, the corridor of doom, their heads drooping like daffodils in December. Wilted, they talk to themselves or to loved ones who aren't there again. Dry and wrinkled, slumped in their wheelchairs, these wounded warriors, no salve to soothe them, no salvation. More women than men, though sometimes it's hard to tell. So here they sit, all brides and grooms, wedded to each other, to the same hallway, that long aisle of forgetfulness, in their sleepy sameness, a bond never broken, until death do they part. This one was inspired by a trip to New York City. It's titled Running Through Grand Central at 1 a.m. Two strangers in a hurry, we chase the last train out of New York City. He holds the door to the station, still a gentleman at that hour, dressed in his business suit, his briefcase weighing him down, as if he carries the office hustle home. We sidestep the sleeping man propped against the wall like a rag doll, the dust and grime of the city, his only possessions. The sight of him in his tattered clothing almost makes me miss a step. Oblivious to us, he blends into the wall, the floor, his homeless hands idle by his side. I glance back briefly, keep going, leave him behind. And I think I'll close with a semi-humorous poem. Everyone loves fairy tales. I've read my share and I still read them again and again. This one is titled Fairy Tales. Believe in happily ever after, that there really is a prince waiting for Rapunzel to let down her hair, that Cinderella's glass slipper fit, wasn't too tight after 3 years of marriage, and that there really was no apple, that Snow White wanted to live with 7 little men, their small penises tucked into the underwear she washed and washed. Believe that Goldilocks never grew up, never let all those men into her bed trying to find the one who was just right. Or that Red Riding Hood wasn't attracted to the wolf, didn't tease him with her basket of goodies that were never meant for grandmother. Believe that Cinderella's fairy godmother thought the prince was good. Believe that mothers know better, but are afraid to tell their daughters how they really end, that the prince isn't charming after he gets the girl. Thank you so much.
That was wonderful, Pat. It was very fun at the last one there. I have to say, your poem, Tell Me, as a retired teacher, I definitely relate to what you try to elicit out of students in their writing. And boy, you get some sad tales, that's for sure. But thank you. All right, next up we have Sarah Rizzuto. Sarah Rizzuto holds an MFA from Southern Connecticut State University, where she has taught creative writing and also disability studies through the Women and Gender Studies program. This past June, Sarah facilitated a workshop on disability poetry and activism and participated in New Haven's One City Read, which chose Sitting Pretty, a memoir and essays by disability advocate Rebecca Tausig, as its 2023 selection. The International Festival of Arts and Ideas scheduled events in response to the book, Sitting Pretty, and invited Sarah to read her poetry. The former president of the Connecticut Poetry Society's New Haven chapter, Sarah considers herself both a poet and an advocate for social justice. She hopes to publish her first chapbook soon. So welcome, Sarah.
Thank you, Barb. I particularly appreciate this series, not only because it brings us all together, but in the way that it does so, because obviously Zoom makes it more accessible for all of us, and especially people like myself who find it difficult to travel and be in different communities. And this is a great way to unite the four corners of the state. So I really appreciate the accessibility of this program. My father passed in 2021 from cancer, and ever since then, I've been mainly working on a chapbook, which is the one I hope to publish soon, about him and about his life. So these are some poems from that collection. The first one I have for you today is called Cracked. My aide runs to the dollar store on her lunch break, and when she returns, sets a small bag of chili roasted pistachios by my computer as I fervently peck away, only using one finger to edit midterm essays I can't wait to get off my hands. I'm in a crunch, a few more hours until grades are due, but the snack snags my attention and reminds me of how every week my dad drove 40 minutes to drop off the basics. 2 dozen eggs, a box of salted butter, a pack of bacon, with either a candy bar or pistachios in the mix. Sometimes there were surprises, like extra toilet paper or avocado oil. I'd grown up getting a can of cashews every Christmas. No wrapping paper necessary. But as an adult, pistachios were my favorite, whether they were sweet chili, honey roasted, jalapeno, or lightly salted. I liked how easily they cracked between my teeth, an earthy flavor in my mouth. Still, a mouthful wasn't an option. I'd pick them up, one at a time, with thumb and forefinger, like the slowly descending claw in the prize machine, determined I'd win. Some days, the prizes were bigger, and it seemed my dad was on a search for the largest bag he could find, one I never bothered buying myself. One afternoon, he stopped by with what I thought were the usual groceries, until he handed me a Hershey's Kiss-shaped tin. I was wondering what kind of kisses were inside when he took off the lid to show me salted pistachios. My sister would have been disappointed that there was no chocolate, but not me. I smiled because he had cracked them all open already. No nuisance. This way they are easier to eat, he said. My dad knew my fingers couldn't split them with the slice of a fingernail, the same way I couldn't slit a birthday card from its envelope. Most tasks that call for nuanced movement were left to someone else. Turning a key to my apartment with the flick of my wrist is on my bucket list of never gonna happen, or don't mind if it doesn't. My dad would have taken that neon orange bucket of never mind, scored for the nearest Five Below, and filled it full with pistachios of every kind, ensuring they were ready for my chipmunk cheeks, hunger satiated with no work. My next poem is called Breaking and is written in 3 sections. 1, my father didn't act as if I were fragile, but he always reminded me to be careful, his voice becoming sudden if I were about to back into a table, catch its corners, or run over the power cord to my wheelchair. Whenever I roll into a store, I have to mind door jams, the turning radius of aisles, people's sandaled feet, especially now. And if purses will smack me in the face as I sit admiring a jewelry display and someone hurries past. One time, I rested my driving arm on my joystick, edged too close to a rectangular case showing off diamond necklaces and other jewels I could only afford to stare at. Without warning, the case fell, colliding with another and yet another, landing with a muted thud on carpeted floor in the middle of Sears, where I sat stunned. I was relieved my dad wasn't with us. My mom heard the fall from several racks away, hoping it was someone else's kid. 2. I wasn't used to falling, much less getting hurt. Growing up with a wheelchair meant chasing my sister at breakneck speed down our street. But there were no wobbly first bicycle rides with skin knees, no roughhousing with 3 older brothers, no telling them to stop, no thracking my toe on a wooden chair or stepping on my niece's stray Legos. No, some days my days were painfully uneventful, but I was drawn to activities that didn't draw blood. Like the Easter I listened to Jesus Christ Superstar, learning the lyrics in chorus. One afternoon, our teacher came in drunk, unable to stay upright, head pressed against piano keys. The final bar of his career. Students laughed, spewed cruel things, while I stayed quiet. None of us knew why he drank, but I figured his pain had gotten beyond him. Three, you used to tell me, it's just pain. It wasn't dismissive, just matter of fact. I couldn't do anything, couldn't even flatten the damn bee that stung you straight on the tongue while you stood in our driveway, talking to a neighbor who ended up being your ambulance ride because I didn't drive. I couldn't do anything after your first open heart surgery or triple bypass, unable to help you at the hospital. I did my best to stay hopeful, to not give your pain a life of its own. I thought of you coming home and how all I had to be careful about was how to hug you without leaning against your long chest incision, new scar, forever tender. I fear the days I cannot lean into the pain, so excruciating it isn't just pain. It's death, a descent like none. I've fallen into believing bearing it takes practice, how close I come to breaking, determined to wake each day to live again. My next poem is called In All Seriousness. Growing up, my dad would always laugh, remembering how I insisted I was the instructor and my sister, my younger sister, the struggling student. Even at 6 years old, I'd assign long lists of spelling words I expected my sister to memorize. I'd test her days later, swiftly correcting in red crayon. Even though my sister knew the answer, she repeatedly asked to be the teacher. Soon enough, I was speaking to actual students, clustered in my classroom, chatting and asking on repeat, what's the homework? How long does the poem have to be? It's my job to push them, to spark their interest in issues that grow into dreams. Once discarded in the corner of their bedrooms, where they played with Legos, determined to build something great, while I worried about how to best build their character. My father reminds me, if I just gave them all A's, my job would be so much easier. I'd laugh every time. My dad, who grew up going to Catholic school, even though he didn't believe in it, My dad, who never went to college and couldn't spell to save his life, used to poke me with an imaginary ruler, ribbing me, asking, what did I do wrong to raise a teacher in this house? I'm only serious, he'd say, grinning. Teachers are mean, he'd continue, but you're the nicest one I know. If I was in your class, you'd give me an A, right? I'd pause, pretending to be in solemn thought. I don't know, Dad. I don't know. But if you showed up on campus, waiting outside my classroom door, I'd let you in before me, smiling, eager for you to sit up front. You'd instinctively walk to the last row and sit down. I'd begin the lesson, and 5 minutes in, you'd edge your hand up. Yes, I'd say, and you'd ask to use the bathroom, eyes laughing. That poem obviously shows the humor of my father. And the last one kind of ties into what Barb said about me, believing that I always try to advocate for social justice for people with disabilities and people that are LGBT and all kinds of causes that I find myself part of. One of the issues that I'm having now, and I wouldn't normally share this, but it ties into the poem, is that I have my bio written in the past tense that I taught at Southern because this past December, there was 5 Fridays in the month. And so I got a third paycheck instead of the usual 2 that we would get as I would get as a part-time professor. And most people don't know, perhaps you do, but as a person with a disability that has SSDI that I've had all my life, I have to stay under a very low limit of what I earn every month. And because I got that third check, which I've gotten in previous years because I've taught at Southern for almost a decade, I went over my limit. And so now they've stopped my disability check. They were supposed to stop it in December when I went over, but they kept issuing it to me, and I didn't know that was a problem. And because they kept issuing it to me until June, they want thousands of dollars back now, because they say that I shouldn't have received that money, even though I was never notified of that case. So because I went over a limit due to how paychecks fell at my university, I can't work there right now. And it means that as a person with a disability, I have to continually search for income that fits their parameters. And, they're not just taking away a job, they're kind of taking away, a dream that I've always had, becoming a teacher and maintaining the, staying working in the field as I have. And my parents and my teachers and some of the people here have always been very encouraging of what I wanted to do. So I'm still trying to remain positive at certain times and push forward, but that's something that I'm working through. And this poem speaks to that. It's called Different Lifetimes. My parents always reminded me, upward and onward, keep going. But had I not been adopted and lived in India more than a few months, my cerebral palsy probably would have cost me more than I can imagine. My disability wouldn't get me anywhere, stuck on street corners, selling pencils, nothing noble, only retribution for a previous life, one I couldn't remember, but one karma determined I hadn't lived well. Had I lived in India, I would be of the Sudra caste, the untouchables, scorned for past wrongdoings, often servants. Even as a servant, I'd be sure to disappoint. Upward and onward, foreign to sealed ears. Here in Connecticut, a lifetime away, I'm a professor, teaching English, one class on the lowest rung of the academy. Because if I could step up, I'd lose the disability check that keeps all other checks in their place. ensuring they remain small, enough for me to rent low-income housing, enough to keep me fed with a packed fridge, enough to keep me warm in off New Haven Park benches. Those benches have held the homeless, those with only enough for bus fare. I'm grateful to be in from the cold, but my ceiling is made of glass, and I see right through it to cement. My raised fist bleeds, stared down in silence. No one speaks of steps for me in my wheelchair to make a grander entrance besides those seen as royalty, those I've dreamed of standing beside since I was 5, those who knew I could do more, be more, treated as equal in their classrooms, not as someone special, only relegated to resource rooms. My professors' voices were loud, echoing my parents. Keep going, they said, even when ceilings shattered around me, because someone else's fist came before mine. Thank you.
Wow, you are so brave, Sarah. Wow. All three ilks of poetry were really I love the ones about your dad. I love the ones about teaching, and this last one is a real heartbreak. So we all wish you the best of luck in overcoming that bureaucratic obstacle. So thank you for coming. All right, so next we have Nicole Caruso Garcia. Nicole's full-length debut poetry collection, Oxblood, was named a finalist for the Able Muse Book Award and the Richard Wilbur Award. Oxblood was also awarded the International Book Award in the narrative poetry category. Nicole's work appears in Best of New Poets, Light, Mesocammon, Plume, Rattle, Rhino, and elsewhere. She serves as associate poetry editor at Able Muse and as an executive board member at Poetry by the Sea, an annual poetry conference in Madison, Connecticut that emphasizes diversity, inclusiveness, community, and artistic excellence for an international community of poets, students, and scholars. So if you would, please welcome Nicole Caruso Garcia. Hey, Nicole.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Most of the poems that I will read for you tonight come from Oxblood, which is my first and only book for now, but I'm working on a second. So I'll start with those, and I'll finish up with a poem from the new manuscript. It'll start off a little rough, and then I'll bring you in for a smooth landing at the end. We'll end up in a different place than we began. The first poem is called Appraisal. Once raped, you wear it daily. Learn to see the cut, the color, clarity, and carrot. Each time you try to square asymmetry, it cleaves, reveals another jagged facet. Fool, you think it fits inside one poem. No. Map with calipers and microscope your story since you came to wear that stone. Flawed and heart-shaped, bluer than the hope. Since you must wear it, hone it with precision. Leave your wrists unslit, the blood unbled, to cut and polish sin to scintillation. Woman, rise up from the rhinestone dead. Yet, what can cut a diamond? Nothing can, except the hardest substance known to man. The next poem is a poem I dedicated to my gynecologist, Dr. Leslie Goldstone Orley. And I shared it with her, and we had a very productive discussion afterward. It's called, Have You Ever Been a Victim of Violence? 11 Reasons Why I Don't Check Yes. Because the box, once X'd, can't be undone. Because To check the box is like a sadder version of I voted, because I'll disappoint my angel of a gynecologist. She'll ask me when, and see, I've kept the truth from her for years. Because, damn it, I resent the box, just waiting there to ambush me again. Because I bristle at the label victim and survivor. Can't win, both dice are loaded. Because the waiting room is Starbucks busy. Because the box is no confessional. Because there is no exorcist on staff. Because don't ask me to concede a thing when it's already such a feet in stirrups, flashlight on my cervix kind of day. Because of women wearing crowns of thorns far thornier than mine. Because what grit I've got, I ration. Ghost ship. At a distance, candles guttering can look like party lights, the way a ghost ship might seem from shore. It may have seemed I was carousing. It may have hurt you seeing my illuminated decks, my painted flags livened by wind. Despair is so immaculate a plague. A healthy vessel still will float, although you pillaged all the spirit from its hold. A ship like that may run aground or wreck against the cliffs. Adrift between the quick and the dead, it is not sorry, does not love or hate. It lists. The next poem is called Dear Reader, and it has an epigraph from the French essayist Roland Barthes, The Pleasure of the Text. Is not the most erotic portion of the body where the garment gapes, the intermittence of skin flashing between two articles of clothing, between two edges. It is this flash itself which seduces. Dear reader, you come to hear me come undone, the diction taut then loose from my chameleon tongue. You sometimes wonder if it's fact, the friction of my lover's stubble where I'm stung. You gape at what the gaping might expose. What will my inky fingerprints betray? I lie sincerely. My words conceal, disclose, no more, no less than paint or bronze or clay. Yet what I thought was simply ink grows thick and hardens, forged like opalescent stone or bee-flecked amber, set in a mosaic I can't stop. In truth, I'm not just shown in dishabille. However crude or sacred, soon all I've offered God to you lies naked. To the Undertaker. Undertaker, I have sought you. Hover close above. My overtaker, faith shaker, was the man I loved. Sew my useless jaw together. Drain my blood's scant volume. He moved as though my lips were stitched by all the days I loved him. Your devotion lasts 2 hours. Tend and wash my body. In merely minutes, he had made unholy, Holy Friday. Fill me with your reeking fluid, harsh, but not unkind. Preserve my body with your proof. His petrified my mind. Pack my cavities with gauze, make pretty perjury. I thought I was a woman loved. I am an effigy. Paint my face so lifelike, they will marvel at my charms. Who's that makeup for? He asked. Gawkers now, and worms. Oh, gentlemen of more respect, lay coins upon my eyes. He made me lesser than a whore, staked claim between my thighs. I was his would-be wife, and still you dressed me for the church. A gown of silken muslin for a carcass with no worth. The next poem is called I Never Fell in Love with You, and it's for my husband. To fall in love implies a lack of choice, as if I were cartoonish, maladroit, and love an open manhole to avoid. To fall suggests a kind of loftiness, that I began in some exalted place and not the eyrie of my loneliness. To fall like rain or tears or mercury, a pawn of Cupid or of gravity. No, with my grappling hook, I climbed precisely. To fall, kerplunk, is stumbling, imperfection. No, I would brave the hot tar of rejection to wear the ermine cloak of your affection. I built a trebuchet and aimed to sail beyond your moat, over your castle wall. I launched, I soared in love. I did not fall. And I will end with my dirty bedroom secret. If you know what my dirty bedroom secret is already, please don't shout it out. Will be revealed. My dirty bedroom secret. It wasn't always a taboo, but now is cause for shame. And oh, you know the thing I mean. And oh, it has a name. Our kinks should be addressed, why not? My husband didn't mind, whether I was all alone or we were intertwined. I'd like to praise it openly. It's healthy, not exotic. In my defense, it didn't used to be unpatriotic. Invented by a clown of theirs, it made right-wingers cheer. My friends are libs and libertines. It's their rebuke I fear. My money in the pockets of that mustached wacko guy. I cringe to think we nearly kissed democracy goodbye. So rest assured, I feel some guilt about this peccadillo. I don't know how I sleep at night on Mike Lindell's My Pillow. Thank you.
Oh, that's hilarious. Wonderful. Wonderful. Oh, Nicole, to the Undertaker. Wow. You should check the chat because, whoa, did you get some feedback on that one? Just amazing. That line, my overtaker, faith shaker, was the man I loved. Some beautiful, beautiful lines. By the way, everyone, Able Muse, which Nicole helps to edit, takes a lot of form poems. Is that correct still, Nicole?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, yes. Form. Yeah, we're all into form.
Good. And you may have noticed some meter and rhyme, and Nicole's working also sonnet format. So anyway, if you're looking for some place to send some wonderful form poetry.
Able Muse is absolutely has a formalist bent, and the Poetry by the Sea conference also, it's it's not a formalist conference, but it's extremely formalist friendly. So I mean, we have people who write free verse there or formalism, but if you feel like your formal poems have not been embraced other places, or you haven't met your formal crowd, you're going to find those people at Poetry Wednesday.
That's great. That's great. And thank you very much, Nicole. And just so everyone knows, I forgot to put bios in the chat, so I'm loading them in there now, so you can refresh on titles of collections that the poets have out, and also in case, like with Nicole, there are some website addresses you can refer to as well. So thanks again, Nicole. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. Okay, next up we have Gwen North Reiss. Gwen is the author of a chapbook, Notes on Metals, and of Paper Aperture, an e-publication from Pen and Brush in New York. Her work is featured in the 2023 Connecticut Literary Anthology, and also the latest edition of Connecticut River Review, which is a wonderful, wonderful publication. I hope you all have received that, or will order it. Gwen writes about modern architecture and art, and is co-author with Alan Goldberg of Oaxacan Folk Art Response to COVID-19, published in 2021. She has a degree in literature from Yale, and her awards include the Rachel Wetzsteon Prize at the 92nd Street Wise Untenberg Poetry Center. She lives in New Canaan. And Gwen, how are you doing on your new architecture book too? Is that coming along?
Yeah, I'm just trying to finish that up, and it's been not a good summer for writing more poetry, but lucky me, I have 3 that are just coming out. So I'm going to launch into those. And somehow I'm going to try to follow Nicole. That was really wonderful. So, well, I think I'm going to jump in with, I have 2 in the beautiful new Connecticut River Review. So I'm going to start with those 2. They're fairly short. The first one is called To the Beat, and that's the BEET. Magenta bulb, no onion scales, a bleeding out on the knife, dense and darkest sweet, how you die, everything. Within the sandpaper skin, a core traced with crescent ghosts. Under the faucet, a pink effusion ribbons the sink. Sphere and a rat tail, all hair and spine at the base of a planetary presence. Your stalks are red, splayed arrows with green leaves arching over the ground, where you hid a shock of incandescence inside the drum. No one ate beets at my house, but I learned on a cutting board to open the root's closed mouth, finger its fluid edge, stain my teeth, break into the spilling ink. And my second one, it's kind of a riddle poem, only because I didn't actually say what I'm writing about in the title or in the poem, but I'm hoping the first line just gives it away. The title is Hole in the Light. Giant when slant, shape of the thing and its absence, and isn't in sight and present. Noon is a depressing time, too much supervision. Evening, they make a garden of wherever you are. When a cloud passes overhead, the ghostly arc pulls a pond of dark through the air. In the heat, you'll cross to their side of the street, to whatever of night lingers between awnings and concrete. In summer, 7 a.m., trees map their columned tracery on grass and street, immaterial velvet, branch and leaf, not quite outline, not quite grief, and not entirely underneath. I'm going to read one older poem that got its start in a wonderful class taught by Sharon Dolan at the 92nd Street Y. And it's in the form called the Geigen, which many of you may know well. It's a form, it's a very loose form that has pieces of villanelle and sonnet and line, but it's just a gentle, easy form. Line 1 repeats as line 11, line 6 repeats as line 12. Sometimes there's a little volta toward the end or at the end. And the name Geigen, it's actually Ruth Ellen Coker invented it and did a whole book of them. And she took the name Geigen from the Godzilla movies. Geigen was one of the monsters that was made up of, this was the pre-computer days. So the monster was made up of leftover pieces from other monsters. And he was called the Geigen. So here are leftover pieces of maybe sonnets and villanelle bits and pieces. This poem is about just the visuals of illuminated manuscripts, which I love. It's called Illuminated. Curl this leaf, branch, wing, frame a dragon's face in a box of light, the endless tail a thin swirl of the pen, paint red on vellum's white. Saints know the world too well. Above them the saturated sky of infilled cobalt blue, a lake of stars, decorum of color, keyhole window in the tower, St. Cuthbert as a shepherd boy, outlined in a ribbon of gold, the earth a bestiary burnished by the sun. Helix, Celtic cross, the psalters, monsters, and grotesques, foliage in arabesque, a tree enfolded like an artichoke, the arcs unloading, goat and hedgehog, the lion's hooded locks. In a corner, the dark head of St. John's eagle. Griffin, emblazoner, curl this leaf, branch, wing, frame a dragon's face in a box of light, outlined in a ribbon of gold, the earth a bestiary burnished by the sun. Every story sifting through the one the hours told. Angel with red wings against a golden ground, Hannibal's elephants vexed by the blizzard snow, his soldiers' bronze masks closed down as gods and men and beasts lean into the ironwork of text. Okay, my next one was published earlier this year in a little online journal called Book of Matches. I loved that name, and I sent them my poems because I liked the title. It's one of my attempts at a sonnet. It's called Learning from Proserpina. It was the first story I read in Latin rhyme, and puzzling over the words long enough to find their English equivalents gave me time to marvel over all the shocking stuff. That a mother could bargain with the underworld, that eating the wrong fruit locked down destiny, that the gods were selfish and absurd and worse, unsatisfied, that their felonies went unpunished, that weather could change fate and the seasons mock grief's internal shriek, that we're hardwired for longing, that hell has tended gardens with blood-red pomegranate, and that a woman in search of her child is an unquiet fire to whom only water can speak. Okay, I've got two more. One short one. This was the result of one of those challenges to yourself to write a poem about something that's been so written about that you're already in trouble before you start. So here's a poem about a rose. Hive of edges, ear-soft ledges, swirl-combed presence, crimson message, earth-made selvage, whirlpooled spillage, core and self-edge, silken scrimmage, cloud-close spaces, shells of graces, sleeves and cases, ripped clean traces, spin and stasis, frailest braces, cup of rages, tender freight is, furls and blazes, bowl of pages, layered engines wrapped oasis. Okay, and I have one more that I'm happy to say is upcoming in the Connecticut Literary Anthology for 2023, and so I just wanted to read that. And it's for my whole life I've loved Alexander Calder's work. Who doesn't? And so it took me many years to get this right, and I'm really happy to have it coming out in the Connecticut Literary Anthology. It's called After Watching the Film Clips of Calder and His Circus. Knees on the floor, you placed the curved blocks into a ring, settled your gravelly voice into the ringmaster's grand gesture and tone, and set them in motion, baroque urchins, horses of looped wire, charioteers, and tightrope walkers in hats and tails. Louisa tended to the music, though once in a New York apartment, Noguchi ran the Victrola. Under raggedy coats and tutus, spines curve, legs and arms thin to precision. Hands are mittens of wire. Tufts of yarn, thick and unkempt, give the lion his mane and the clown his oversized cloak. A stitched smile cracks open on the trumpeter's sock face. The elephant is all hoses and block legs. The sword swallower's mouth is a hovering O at the hilt of the blade, and crumpling under a jumble of beads, the exotic dancer, tender and worn out. Little dogs run inside the wheels of the Pegasus chariot. With puffs of breath, cranks and turns, you engineered bodies in the air. Later, too, what you made turned, twirled, flipped, and flew. In the workshop, a rivet became an eye. A coffee can fanned out into the Medaglia d'Oro wing of a long-legged bird with a neck of Ballantine ale. Guerrero photographed the studio from above, hammers and rasps, a rain of steel, a bright chaos, pools of light shattering over all the gleaming metal. Teardrops, paddles, and wings carve a planetary arc through air. Beasts crane upward and stand their ground, playfully unhinged from earth. The sun, through a big window, illuminates your wild white hair. Lollipops swing on their gallows. And that's
Wow.
it.
Thank you, Gwen. Wonderful. I think you'll see in the chat that everyone has commented on your wonderful descriptions. That Caldor at the end there, oh my gosh, it's perfect. I mean, I could see that. I could see it. And a rose as what was it? A bowl of pages.
Bowl of pages, yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
wonderful. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful poems.
Thank you.
Okay, so next, I'm just going to put that, there we go. Next and last, unfortunately, because this has been a wonderful evening, we have Faith Vicinanza. I'm sorry if I stumble on your name, Faith. I keep wanting to put extra N's in there. So it's Vicinanza. Is the inaugural Poet Laureate of Southbury. She has served as a master teaching artist in poetry for the Connecticut Commission on the Arts, as editor for several literary magazines, and as the founder and executive director of the Connecticut Poetry Festival, which was held in 1997, 2001, and 2003. A member of 2 National Slam poetry teams, Vicinanza competed in National Slam competitions in 1994 and 1996. She was a member of the U.S. Slam team that competed in Sweden in 1997 and served as the executive director of the 1997 National Poetry Slam Championships, which were held in Middletown. Sorry, I missed that. The largest poetry event in state history. When she isn't writing, Faith leads poetry and publishing workshops, works full-time as a cybersecurity professional. She paints and she leads the occasional dot painting workshop. She's the author of 4 collections of poetry and is currently working on several new collections and a memoir. So please welcome Faith. Hi, Faith.
Thank you. Thank you. The poetry has been stunning. Barb, you pulled together a wonderful program. Thank you for including me. I'm going to keep it short because we're running late, but I'm going to start with 2 poems from a collection. This is called Arturo, and this came out in the fall. It's a chapbook. And I'll read 2 pieces from that. And then I'm going to read 2 pieces from an upcoming chapbook called Shall We Dance? And then I'll read a couple of pieces from a book that's coming out in the fall called Breathe. So, presumed innocent. You are a no trespassing sign, only I have already scaled the fence, pulled myself to the topmost edge of you. Seemingly out of reach, but I am determined to climb up and over, descend into the forested hillside that is you. You are everywhere, nowhere. A shadow just this side of the tree line. You keep to the far side of dusk. You keep me wanting. Call me by my name. Watch as I bed down in a blanket of green. Soon I'll wrap myself in autumn's russet, the blood reds that are a harbinger of winter. There will come a time when you will have no choice but to acquiesce, unfettered, and I will abandon this hillside. Leave as I came, leave you to your solitary mischief. For now you attend to me in dreams, certain I'll forget your eyes in daylight, but it's too late for presumptions. Your touch, primal as breath, your breath everywhere beyond the perimeter, beyond the break of day. So the book Arturo is the name of someone that I had a 3-year relationship with. And the book has 2 sections. The first section is called And Suddenly There Was You, and the second section is called After. And this is a poem from the section about after the relationship ends. Oh, love, who'd wince then chide when I'd call you by your given name, your father's name, but held vigil when death mouthed it, whispered it. Death unflinching in the face of your conviction that you'd outwit him with prayer. Death unyielding, notwithstanding your belief that you, so young and a man of God, could grapple, bargain perhaps, clinching hope in your fists, certain he must have mistaken you for another. That last time in your hospital room, that last kiss, the taste of defeat almost sweet on thinned lips, a calm throughout your frail and failing body. So unlike those nights when we shattered presumed boundaries with our lovemaking, moved through each other with such fierceness in defiance of death, who now comes for you nonetheless, too soon, too soon. Just very quickly, I hadn't seen him in about 3 years, and a mutual friend hunted me down and let me know that he was in a hospital in New Jersey and dying of cancer, and I went to see him one last time. So these 2 poems are from a collection called Shall We Dance? And on the heels of a medical meltdown where my life was hanging in the balance, it took about 6 months for me to recover. I was in and out of the hospital 5 stays and 10 weeks, and actually signed my son power of attorney. That's how fragile things had gotten. And I subsequently decided I'm not going down without a fight, and I started ballroom dancing. And so I've been doing that for 3.5 years. And these are 2 pieces from a collection that'll be out sometime this month. The first poem is titled The Body Keeps Score. If I lean too far left or throw myself eagerly into an underarm turn, my core not in sync with my feet, some old injury protests like rust-laden gears breaking free, joints snap as if bones are coming undone, as if they'll all just tumble suddenly to the floor in a heap. There's no ACL in my left knee, that knee that I fractured the day I crashed my bike. That day when I broke a rib, scraped away the skin the length of my right arm, wrist to shoulder, much of the arm now scarred, tore my right rotator cuff, dislocated a ring finger, bone bruises, both sides of my body, a year of physical therapy. There are other incidents over the span of 60 plus years, a fall down a flight of stairs, very pregnant with my first son, certain I'd go into labor. I did not. A ruptured kidney, a brain tumor, foot surgeries, car accidents, a concussion in my 20s, rotator cuff repair last year, and I celebrate a body that's amassed so much pain and hasn't given up each time I step onto the dance floor. And then it's hard to dance when you're wearing heavy armor. When I thread my way through the white of the forest, previously untrod, snow underfoot, a winter's slate sky, trees laden with white reflect the rising sun as if glass. The feathering white of my breath hangs in the cold air, all near silent save a faint heartbeat, my own, and that of a snowy owl perched far to the north, the heartbeat too of a sudden hidden earth beneath layers of white on white. When I'm standing at last at the water's edge, a veiled shoreline, morning welcomes and I shatter the pristine, slip free of this cloak of lamb's wool, white osprey feathers, layer upon layer of pale cotton, beads and ivory clasps, abandon this heavy armor meant to protect, then kneel, place my warm palm to the iced over edge of a still lake. It comes to life at my touch beneath the retreating light of last night's full moon, a white moon. I step unbound into the cold water, lean into the dance. And I'm going to read a couple of poems. The book that's coming out in the fall called Breathe is about family. And most of the book is pretty dark. And one of the chapters in that collection is called Brother. And it has to do with the loss of my brother. He took his life when he was 43. It's almost 20 years now. And this is a couple of poems. So I'm going to end with these. We'll end on a dark note. But that's this is what I want to share with you. So, reluctant courier. And Peter was my husband for 20 years. He's deceased, but at the time, so Peter's referred to in this poem. Reluctant courier. When Peter hangs up the phone, Wasilla police have delivered news meant for me. Peter drives the hour alone to tell me face to face, rarely at ease with the simple act of comforting someone, preferring intellect to emotion. It's easier on the heart. Except when his dogs die 8 years apart, each time he breaks down, mourns for months. At the office, he finds me outside having a smoke with coworkers. When I notice him walk from guest parking to me, there's not one good reason for him to suddenly be here an hour from home without calling first. Did he pause? Stare a second? Did he tear up? Wish like hell it wasn't true? I already know it's bad. I just don't know how bad. Awkward. He's desperate to free himself from this task. He is an hour of distress for what he must do, blurts it out as best he can. Your brother. And then he reaches for me, because it's what a good husband would do. Wasilla, Alaska, December 12th, 2001. Before they scrub, scrape, disinfect, remove, I want to lie on the kitchen floor, rest my cheek in your blood that streams through the ceiling vent, pools on white linoleum. Friends, family, husband insist and I stay away until cleaning crews come and leave. 3 days. What they cannot get out, they cover. Linen white Tyvek stapled to stairs, walls, floors, the vent above and below. When they have done all that they can, I come to your house, now mine. Do not expect so much white. your empty bedroom, the cold inside of an egg, blown clean. Police report. Peter refused me this time and again, and though I search for it now and then, rifling through old folders, notebooks, thinking he must have kept it, thinking he would never just toss it, thinking assuredly he would know it mattered, that I would need to read it someday, like an itch I cannot reach, how it will not be satisfied until I'm conversant with those emotionless details. Police simply reporting what is. What is there really to know, except you are gone? He must have read it, held the secret for years that I have only surmised. How they found you, your body limp, the gun, the blood, some blunt tool you used as leverage. This after dawn, the woman who found you called it in. Would they have noted the gold chain around your neck that will go missing, the expression on your face? Was it one of shock, a flash of regret, blank indignation, relief? Did they make note of where you settled, a chair, your bed? Was your body still warm to the touch? Would they have written in the margin, how could we have let this happen? How did any of us let this happen? I want the minutest detail, all of it. And I know, as Peter must have known, it will be an undeserved punishment to run my fingers along the dry ink, to internalize that moment, obsess over it, until I too can find no way out.
Wow.
Two
Wow.
more. Thank you. Two more.
Okay. Oh, two more. I would like to, but we are really over
Oh,
at
it's
this. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Okay, they were wonderful. I thought just heart-wrenching, the last ones from your brother. But I want to thank everyone. This was an amazingly diverse and wonderful, wonderful reading. Also to other people, if you have not yet put your name in the hat for joining us on a future reading, my email is barbjenis@gmail.com. We welcome poets at all stages of their careers, and would love to have you join us. And just if you do, just send me a brief bio and the town you live in, so I know which quadrant to put you in. Lucy, you're here. Thank you, Ridgefield Library, for so generously hosting us on this series and many other series too. And Lucy, you're just always so helpful, so thank you.
Love you, Barb. Thank you, everyone. That was a really amazing evening.
Amazing. All right.
Thank
Well,
you.
come back in October. Hope to see you. Be well.